Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks to everyone for joining as well. Good to see you all. We are here to talk about adopting AI and all of the weird and wonderful ways in which it's challenging, and how can you actually get over those things, and what you need to think about when you're looking at adopting AI. For those of you that don't know me, we'll start with the intro. So my name is Areti. I'm the head of professional services for a Microsoft partner here in the UK called Telefonica Tech. We belong to the Spanish Telefonica, so I work in the Microsoft Business Applications division, looking after the delivery of projects and programs for professional services customers, anything from a few £1,000s to a few £1,000,000. We're a team of just over 30, and I've been involved in D365 CE in the Power Platform for over 15 years. Before my current role, I was a solution architect, and I'm very much involved in the Microsoft community as well. I run the D365 and Power Platform user group in Reading, and I'm also a women in tech and mental health advocate and diversity in IT advocate as well. So when I'm not talking about that, I'm talking about AI and adopting AI, and I'm very much an enthusiastic explorer of that. If we are not connected already and you want to get things like this on your LinkedIn feed, please scan the QR code and let's connect. So what are we going to talk about today? First of all, a brief history of AI, purely because we talk about AI a lot and different people mean different things by that. And then we'll dive straight into what challenges are there with AI. What tools do you have to use when it comes to Microsoft as a stack in terms of adopting AI at the moment? And then we'll go into more of the elements of, as a organization, what are the questions surrounding AI? So how ready is an organization, or how mature? Do you need an AI strategy? What is an AI strategy in the first place? What do you need to do in terms of governance if you're introducing AI to your ecosystem or your architecture? And then spend a bit of time at the end on future predictions. So AI is fairly new, quote unquote, as a technology anyway, not as an idea, as we'll talk about in a second. But there's a lot of things coming up, and that will change what we do in the next few years. So it's a little bit about having a sneak peek on technology as it's evolving and what is potentially going to come our way in the next few years that needs to be considered. There'll be Q&A time at the end, but if, as I'm talking, you have a question or you have an AI adoption story you want to share or anything like that, very happy for you to stick your hand up and I will come to you. I can see you all on my screen. Either save the questions for the end if you'd like, or feel free to just pop your hand up and we'll have a chat.
Can I just stop, just double check that everyone can see the screen okay? Because I know someone's just left to come back in because you couldn't see it. Yeah. Thank you.
Good stuff. Yes, it's very much all about the slides. So if you can't see them, let me know. Good stuff. So let's talk a little bit then about the brief history of AI, and I promise it will be fairly brief. So AI, or artificial intelligence as a concept, is started in the 1950s. And if you're from the UK, you think of Alan Turing as having come up with the term. In the US, it may be someone else. There's a debate, apparently, about who actually came up with the term, but we won't go into that. The important thing to note is that artificial intelligence is a goal, right? It's not a technology. It's a goal of creating a machine that is as intelligent or even more intelligent than we are as humans. So that was back in the 50s, and a few decades passed before we had enough technological advancement to do machine learning, where machines were actually able to take data and make decisions. A few decades after that, we went into deep learning, which is where machines are still taking data and making decisions, but this time they are using more complex ways of doing it, similar ways to human brains, where we take information and give it to different parts of our brains, and they all come back and give an answer, and that's called neural networks. So very fascinating stuff. More importantly, more recently, we have generative AI, or Gen AI, and this is where machines are creating things. So we give a prompt and it does something for us, which is very, very exciting. And most of those AI models that have been created even pass the Turing test, which is that a human can't tell if it's actually a machine or an actual human. Who knows? The reason why this has advanced a lot more recently than in the past is because we now have more amounts of data and computing power than we've ever had, which has made this possible, but also we have access to AI algorithms, which is actually allowing these models to be created. So it's all very, very exciting times because we're doing some really cool things with the technology and a lot of people are now able to use it. And it has been a journey, because if you even think of a small amount of years before, in 2016 all the way to now, there's been a lot of changes year on year. So it's all accelerating very quickly. Last year was considered the year of us exploring what this technology is. This year was very much the year where we're all executing. So we're starting to use these models, and we're using AI and looking at what they can actually do in practice. And very much from next year onwards, we're expecting to see real results. Do we have artificial intelligence? I argue no. We are many, many years away from that. I think we have artificial capability, not intelligence. We are capable of artificially doing certain things, but we do not have the intelligence in the machines yet. For example, the things that we're using AI for right now, if you think back to 2017, you may have seen this at the time. Dr. Julia Shaw had a little post on Twitter where she said, my AI model can't tell the difference between my labradoodles and my fried chicken drumsticks. I can't get enough of these AI problems. Fast forward to last year, if you gave it a photo of blueberry muffins and chihuahuas. I don't know why we do dog versus food. I'm just going with it. It could actually give you a table, and it could tell you in each cell, in each column, what it was. Now, it does confuse still cookies and muffins, but for something that can't actually even see, this is pretty cool. And this was GPT-4. So it's all really interesting to see how this is developing and how we're using it. And obviously, we're using it for more important things than dog versus food. And the thing that we have to remember as well is that it is a very physical thing. We think of the cloud and we think of the fact that we're not storing data physically anymore, and we don't have hard drives, and all of it is up there. But in reality, the up there is very much down here. So we have huge amounts of data centers around the world, over 8,000 of them. Microsoft's biggest one is in Chicago, and it's 700,000 square feet. So we're talking about huge infrastructure here. And all of this is starting to have quite a lot of environmental impact, because the amount of energy and power that we need to actually compute for AI purposes with AI prompts and AI models is increasing. And Microsoft, for example, are looking at atomic fusion tech to deal with this. But there's also the question of, can we actually change the models to make them more efficient? And if you think about the power element of it, a ChatGPT query is 10 times more power intensive than a Google search. And that makes sense, because they're doing completely different things, right? And it's much more valuable. But Europe as well, as a continent, we have the oldest power grids. So it's creating a bit of a question around the future, and how can we actually have enough infrastructure to allow us to make AI sustainable. So we have to remember this physical aspect of it as well. And that's kind of where we are right now, is trying to combat that in the future. So let's talk then a little bit about the AI challenges. The infrastructure one I've just mentioned is one in a way, but that's more at the macro level. In terms of AI challenges, I think of them as threats to AI adoption by default. And the main one at the moment, first of all, is the fact that it's very, very difficult to calculate return on investment for introducing AI in an organization. And that's because of the second challenge, which is adoption rates can vary in a department or even in a team. So it's very difficult at the moment, if we're talking about personal productivity AI, to actually say this is the difference that it has made. And that's causing a bit of a problem in terms of adopting it and spending more money on it, which is the third thing. It can be very expensive, licenses or otherwise. If you're looking at your own AI models, your own AI infrastructure, it can get very, very expensive. There is also the fact that it's not changing the game massively yet. It will do, absolutely, I think, but it's more game varying than game changing. It's not completely changing what we're doing right now. So it all becomes a little bit difficult from an adoption perspective. And apart from that, there is also the fact that we have trust issues with it. And by that, I mean, McKinsey did a research on the main risks we perceive as organizations with AI. And the top one is inaccuracy, and it's only gotten worse, as you can see here in the last year. And then intellectual property infringement, cybersecurity, which we'll talk about in a second. So there is this issue of us hyping up Gen AI, and then actually we're seeing the fact that at the moment with the AI models out there, they're great, but they're not perfect. They're not a perfect solution. And in terms of the accuracy of what they're doing as well, the main issue is that there is inaccuracies there. And that creates a bit of a problem. We don't want humans to be making wrong decisions based on AI. And this is one of the risks as well with it that cybersecurity professionals are seeing. So is actually the introduction of AI models and experimental technology to a certain extent a way into an organization from a cybersecurity perspective. So you can see here Microsoft has done some research on the key risks, and we have the ones we know and love on the right-hand side, but you've also got AI-specific ones, scams, wrong decisions being made, and AI going rogue. And of course, all of the other ones can be made worse by using AI to achieve them. So there is a bit of a problem when it comes to security as well that needs to be tackled. And what I find interesting with this is that we obviously have Copilot, Microsoft Copilot for security. I made it 10 minutes before mentioning the C word. So we have Microsoft Copilot for security, which is one of the many Copilots Microsoft has. So can we really use AI to combat threats with AI? Is that something that we can actually do? How well is the thing that is actually creating the problem able to beat that problem that it's creating by itself? It all becomes very meta. So I'll be interested to see how this works out in practice. But we know that AI in cybersecurity is helping at the moment. Copilot particularly is a big time saver at the moment, and cybersecurity is top when it comes to how much time it saves across a function, from some research Microsoft did on Copilot usage. And there seems to be this ideal 11-minute milestone where people will perceive getting value out of AI if it saves us at least 11 minutes, which is quite interesting. I don't know why it's 11 minutes, but anything less perceived as less valuable, anything more it's perceived as amazing. And it's great that cybersecurity is actually getting a lot from it, because where do we have the biggest talent shortage? Cybersecurity. We have a lack of people being able to provide skills, cybersecurity skills, or being trained as security professionals. And if Copilot can actually allow the humans in cybersecurity to be more productive, could we potentially combat that talent shortage? So it's all very interesting whether AI can actually solve the problems that we have and also the problems that it itself creates. But all of these are quite big challenges to consider: the inaccuracy, the cybersecurity element of it, the cost, the lack of ROI, the lack of adoption. It's all a bit of a challenge at the moment. So let's talk a bit about the AI tools that we have, and then we're going to talk about what we can actually do to combat these challenges. So from an AI tools perspective, at a high level, the first thing you have as a potential option is Copilots, which are everywhere. And Copilots are a great option, and they are being fairly widely adopted now in terms of their use, because they are a solution that is very quick to adopt. It's in a rapid authoring environment. It's a fully managed stack. And with Copilot Studio as well, you can build your own. You can customize it with Copilot extensions. So it's your data, your logic, and you can actually build your own use of it. And it can be very, very useful. That's one option, which is the quick way of getting there, the UI for AI, as Satya Nadella called Copilot, which I love. But there is also the other way you could go. So you could use Copilots, or if you're looking to go code first, you could look at Azure AI services. And this is where you can play with a lot of really cool technology. But it's a different approach. If you're going to use Azure AI, things like OpenAI service or the other models you see here, because it gives you complete control. You're going for control and customization, and there is a lot of open source models here, over 1,600. So there is a lot of ways that you can use these to further extend AI, but it would assume that you would effectively have the skills to actually create your own models using these tools. But there's a lot of really, really cool options. Regardless of which way you go, there is really three categories that you are looking at when it comes to AI. Either you're looking at personal productivity, so things like Copilot for Microsoft 365 is an option there, but ROI is very hard to measure, or you're looking at commercial use, so Copilot in D365 is an example of that, or you are looking at organizational enhancement, so actually changing how you work as an organization. So you'll have very specific use cases, probably looking at automation, OpenAI and Copilot Studio coming into that, and you would very likely have a lot of reporting on KPIs and ROI on this to make sure that the investment is actually returning on itself. whichever way you go, whether it's doing what you're doing better, changing what you're doing, or completely transforming the business, the adoption rates will vary. Personal productivity, a lot easier to adopt. Organizational enhancement, much more difficult to adopt, takes longer, but has a higher organizational impact. So it really depends on which one you do. And of course, you could do all three, right? They're not mutually exclusive. You could do personal productivity and commercial use and organizational enhancement. That's absolutely fine. But it will be one of these three things or all of these three things that you are looking at when it comes to AI technology. And you'll probably have use cases that are across these three areas. The thing to consider regardless is how long is it going to take to get value out of it, however you define value financially or otherwise, productivity, for example. Gartner suggests that if it's a quick win that you're going for, it will be less than a year before you get value, but the more complex you get, the more time it's going to take. Differentiating use cases, so this is where you're looking to change how you work and what you do, it might take 1 to 2 years. If you're looking to completely transform the business, it might take longer than 2 years. So that has to be taken into consideration if you're looking at the cost of AI, licensing or otherwise, and considering what that actually means in terms of can you wait that long to get value out of it. Given that, as we'll see, a lot will have changed in a couple of years from a technology perspective itself, let alone everything else. So that's all things to consider for the tools. So let's talk then about what can we do about all of this. So the first thing is Microsoft believes, and I agree, as I'm sure we all will, that there's different levels of being ready to adopt AI, and it is just another technology. So organizations are already technologically aware, and we focus as organizations on using technology every day. This obviously takes it a step up. And when it comes to AI, they talk about different levels of maturity. So the organization will be adopting AI. The question is, what stage are we at? And this is a graph from one of the Microsoft reports that they did. And what it shows is that the majority of us at the moment are implementing. So some are exploring still what AI can do. Some are planning to use it. Most are using it to see how they can actually get value out of it. Less are scaling, which is expanding it to more than one area of the organization, and a few are realizing, which is the organization is using it as a whole across the board. What's interesting about it is that of those realizing, just over half are cloud-first organizations. And it may not be that much a surprise, given that for AI solutions to work, they need a lot of capacity and power and computational power as well. So if you are using solutions that are in the cloud, the costs are a little bit lower than if you were doing it yourself, or a lot lower, depending on what you're planning on doing. So a lot of organizations that are cloud first are actually realizing a lot more value out of AI. Does that mean that organizations that are not cloud first are going to be cloud first? Are all organizations going to end up being cloud first? Possibly, with some exceptions. And I say some exceptions because although this is broadly correct for most industries, there are definitely industry discrepancies when it comes to AI adoption as well, and readiness. And this is from Forrester Research. So you can see some use cases for AI on the left, and public sector, as an example, is one industry where the adoption of AI is a lot slower. Is that surprising? Again, not sure. Public sector has a lot of regulation, a lot of compliance requirements in it. Not that healthcare, for example, doesn't, but it feels like public sector are a lot slower at adopting technology. So although we talk about AI maturity and most organizations are implementing, depending on which industry you're in or even which country you're in potentially, there may be changes to that or differences to that. But it's all very interesting that some industries are a lot more quick to adopt and some are less quick to adopt. And it could just have to do with how happy and positive they are towards change and changing the way they work and adopting new technologies, particularly those that have not been 100% proven yet. The other thing is as well, how ambitious is an organization in the first place? And that tends to be 3 different levels. You're either pursuing productivity front and back office, and you're using AI, but in a cautious way, or you might be using it internal only, so not within the in front of the customers, but within the company. That's fine across the board. And the other one is AI first everywhere. If there is a way to work better with customers or as staff, looking at pursuing that. The problem here is that there will be a lot of things you could potentially do with AI because there's a lot of models out there and a lot of tools you could use. And Gartner has a good radar of opportunity, as they call it. And this is for banking as an example, where they suggest you look at mapping what you're trying to do with AI from everyday AI all the way to game changing and external customer facing to internal operations. And can you map all of the things you're trying to do with AI and actually look at which ones are the most important ones to do? Are there any quick wins? Are there any more strategic AI projects that you want to do? How is that actually going to plan out in terms of investment, in terms of budget, in terms of who in the organization takes control of that? So there is an element there of trying to figure out what the right thing to do is at the right time as well. Which brings us then on to strategy. Or is this really a business strategy for AI, really? And I say that because when it comes to organizations, some of them might say, oh, we're using AI. Our strategy is AI. And AI can't really be a strategy in itself. You need to have a business strategy as an organization. And AI should be a catalyst for making that business strategy happen. And there tends to be strategic principles that you need for AI. So when it comes to actually using the technology, you do need an element of strategy in terms of how you will use it. And the first one is check what data gaps you have, because an AI model is going to be only as good as the data you give it. If the data isn't right and the data isn't good enough for the model is going to just give you outputs that are just not valuable to anyone. So you need to understand where you do and don't have data, and therefore what you can use AI models for to a certain extent. And then it's a question of what problems are you trying to solve? What are your use cases for AI? So the different roles in the organization, what issues do they have that AI can help them fix? The other one is, do you have champions internally? Are there super users in the organization that can actually help champion the new technology? Because it is a change in mindset and how we do things and what we use to do something. And old habits die hard. So there's an element of needing to have champions for this. And the other thing is that we will need to reskill to a certain extent, whether it is changing our work habits or actually learning new technologies, learning the best way to write prompts. All of these elements need some consideration as well. How will the team reskill? And also the fact in itself that people will have to work a different way. Do we understand that? Do we know what support people will need? I think all of that's really good, but I personally add a few in, which is people will bring their own AI models to work anyway. Anyone can use Copilot for anything. So there needs to be guidance in an AI strategy as well as to how you're going to use AI, what's allowed, what's not allowed. How are you going to try and measure return on investment? You need to try and figure out if that's monetary or if it's productivity or is it better decision making, whatever the case might be. I think there needs to be some consideration for that. And also, whatever AI strategy is formed, it needs to be reviewed frequently because things will change. The way people will start using the technology will change. The technology itself that they might use might change, so it needs constant review. But there's definitely needs to be a consideration for that in an AI strategy or as part of the business strategy from an AI perspective. And the other thing as well is considering that value. So what is going to drive value out of AI? And for me, in order to get that value, the business strategy is again where we start. So are we actually looking to use AI in a way that is going to help the organization and the teams and the people achieve their goals? Do we know what we're looking to do? Have we got a clear investment plan, particularly if you're looking to transform the whole organization? Technology and data then comes in. The data is the fuel and the infrastructure is the engine, particularly if you're not looking to use SaaS solutions. You need to look at whether you have the right infrastructure to run AI at scale. And again, the data obviously comes in. Do we have the right data to give us the high quality outputs we need to make it useful? From a strategy and experience perspective, do the teams have the right skills, not just to use the technology, but to assess the technology? Do they know when to look at building an AI model internally versus using an existing one? As they say, if something is free, you are the product. So if an AI model is free to use, what are they doing with the data you're giving it, for example? So all of these things need to be considered. And the other thing as well is the culture in itself. If the organization is not data-driven or there isn't leadership support, it's likely that AI adoption isn't going to be high. So there needs to be that collaboration between departments and team and the leadership to actually make sure people are clear what this technology is being used for and what the benefit of using it for is. And then the other thing is the governance, which we'll talk about in a second. The fact that we need to actually control what we're using AI for and know what we're using AI for and what it's doing to make sure that there isn't any data or security issues introduced or responsible AI issues as well. We need to make sure that we're using this in the right way and in compliance with any regulations that there are. So all of that needs to be taken into consideration to make sure we get value out of it. From a governance perspective specifically, it gets a little bit more interesting. So from a governance perspective, there's some things with every new technology that never change. And these are general good practices. And what I mean here is making sure people have guidance, both end users and developers, particularly with AI, when can a model be used or not used? So facial recognition, for example, should we be using it for some scenarios but not others? Microsoft had a request a few years back for the California police department to use it to identify whether someone should be taken in for questioning, and they refused to have it used that way. They rejected it because they said it was trained at the time, facial recognition models were trained on white male faces, so anyone that wasn't white or male stood the chance of actually being questioned unnecessarily, so it wasn't a good use for it. So things like that need a bit of guidance internally as to when they should and shouldn't be used. The other thing is, everyone will remember when Power Automate came out and we started creating flows and we left the old workflows behind, and then there were lots of Power Automate flows and no one knew what they did, what connectors they used, what data they affected, and it all could get out of control. And I think AI and having an AI inventory is a good idea because it can become difficult to know what models are being used where, especially with BYO AI. So it's important to actually have that centralized inventory, starting to have documentation as to what is being used where and why as well. And the other thing is having tools to monitor what the AI models are doing, both to show return on investment and usage, that something is being useful, that people are using it, but also to ensure from a security and compliance perspective that it isn't being used in a way it shouldn't be. Things like cyber attacks, things like third-party sharing of AI data. That all needs to be considered to make sure that when introducing AI, we know exactly what we're doing with it and what the supplier is doing with it as well, to a certain extent. And this brings us to responsible AI principles. So these are Microsoft's ones. So whenever AI is being deployed for a use case, they look at, is it actually going to be used fairly? Is it fair use for everybody? Is it reliable and safe to use? Does it take privacy and security into account? Is it available for everyone to use and accessible? Is it inclusive? But more importantly as well, is the way that the model works transparent to everyone? Does everyone understand how AI is making a decision, why AI is behaving the way it is? Because we may be happy for an AI model to keep a building secure, but if we're looking for an AI model to decide whether someone should get promoted or if they should have a salary increase, we would probably want to know a lot more about how that works and how it makes those decisions. Which brings us to the accountability element of it as well, knowing that whatever the AI model is thinking of doing, someone is accountable for that actual decision that is being made and the decisions that the AI model is making. So there needs to be that accountability as well. These are great, but again, I think I would add a couple of things to it. Scalability and sustainability. I think we need to consider as well before using an AI model. Is it scalable? If the organization changes or if we need to do more with it, can we actually use that model to scale? Is it sustainable as well, environmentally, but also for the future of the organization? Have we got that sustainability element of it? Or are we going to invest a lot of money in using it and then it will change, or a new update will come along and we'll have to constantly keep reviewing this and changing how it works and what we do with it? So I think all of that needs to be considered when looking at governance and making those decisions for AI. From a structure perspective as to who governs and what does that look like, the way Microsoft does it is fairly heavy-handed, as you would imagine, because they have a lot of responsibility for the AI models they provide. So they have a senior leadership team that's responsible for the vision on it. They have an office for responsible AI, looking at the way AI is being used, sensitive use cases, public policy, and they have an Ether committee, which helps the other two make decisions, particularly when there's specific challenges or dilemmas with AI use cases. Now, I'm not saying every organization should have this because this is a fairly evolved governance structure. But one thing that I liked about Microsoft's way of doing governance was that everyone is responsible. So within Microsoft, generally, everyone needs to understand what responsible AI is about and what the principles are. They need to report and escalate any sensitive use cases of it. They need to contact their AI champion if they need guidance. So I think that's very good to have in any organization. And look how happy they are that they are responsible. So there you go. But it is a very important fact that we can't just assume that one person is responsible for using AI the way it's intended. I think the difference with AI compared to other technologies is that everyone can now use it, not just a small amount of people, and they have control over it. So from a governance structure perspective, you might want to consider, having an AI office or an oversight committee. Some big organizations are starting to have chief AI officers or an ethics board as well. But whatever you have in an organization, there is elements to be considered. So however you're looking at using AI, are you still compliant? What are the risks with using it? Is there a social impact? Is there ethical implications? How is the system going to perform? How are you going to review its outcomes? And is the organization actually ready to adopt it? Are there structures in place for that? So all of these things are things to be considered from a governance perspective. So all of it's good, but the other thing to consider as well is the fact that this will change. So in terms of adopting the future of AI, this is where it gets a bit interesting. Because at the moment, if you look at AI trends, we have a lot of different technology and bring that back. Generative AI is there. So it has gone over the hype and we are now becoming a little bit disillusioned with it because we know its limits, but you can see all of the other technologies coming behind it. And some of the more interesting ones are, prompt engineering is a big thing right now, just coming up to top hype, as you can see there. The responsible AI is obviously very much something everyone's concerned about, but there's a lot of other technologies coming that will potentially take over Gen AI or be used probably side by side with Gen AI. So it's something that we need to consider. And what we need to consider as well is that within each of these trends, there are micro trends. So if you take Gen AI as in itself, these are all of the things we're doing with Gen AI right now, and you can see a lot more coming. So there is data storytelling, multimodal UIs, everyday AI, prompt engineering comes back again, no-code platforms, prompt marketplaces. There's all sorts of the cyber psychology. How is all of this technology affecting us in itself? Exoskeletons. I mean, I'm looking forward to that one. AI avatars of the employee. All of these things are things that are coming up, and they will take some years. But it's something that we need to consider is we're looking at a lot of Gen AI models right now, but this will change and there will be more technology, more AI solutions. So having that governance and that structure around it to assess them is going to be very important. So if we look then at specific predictions that have been made for the next few years, I've picked the ones that are most interesting to me. Next year, this is Gartner saying this, we are expecting, apparently, that 30% of Gen AI projects will be abandoned after POC. Why? Because the data is not good enough, or there's not enough controls to manage the risks brought by introducing AI, Gen AI project models, escalating costs, it's getting expensive, and the value is not clear. So these challenges that we mentioned at the beginning very much are still the case. On the other hand, though, a lot of the development and testing strategies will be AI augmented. So we are using AI for other things. So it's going to be a bit of a battle, I think, of trying to use AI and see what it works for and what it doesn't for each organization, the year of results. Fast forward another year, Gartner expects 30% of new apps will be using AI for personalized UI, not a surprise. 75% of businesses will use synthetic customer data. Now that I'm very excited about. For anyone that doesn't know about synthetic customer data, at the moment, if you have customer data and you want to use it for trend analysis, for example, or any other analysis or manipulation, you have to take personal information about your customers out of it, whether that's anonymizing the data, masking it, and you have to comply with GDPR. And because of that, there's a lot of issues with using that data, and it can make it less useful because in some cases, the data that you actually want to have there isn't there for those reasons. With synthetic data, what you can actually do is create fake data for those points that you would normally not be able to keep. And that allows you to mathematically and statistically keep the data in that right quality to use them for trend analysis. And that effectively means that you can use that data without worrying about the implications of personal data and their security, or someone withdrawing their consent for their data to be used that way, because it's all fake, but it still allows you to draw the right conclusions from it. So this is all very interesting. And then robo-colleagues, I don't know how I feel about this one. Having a synthetic virtual colleague, so an Areti bot in my case, that will do the boring bits of my job, and I will actually do the interesting bits of my job. Will this happen in a couple of years? I'm not sure. I think this one might be a bit later, but I am willing to embrace it. I'm willing to try it out and see what it means. And then if you forward another year, this is where sustainability kicks in. So Gartner predicts 25% of CIOs will have their compensation linked to using sustainable technology and its impact. 15% of new applications that are created will be generated by AI. So a human being won't even be involved. And more than 50% of the models that we'll be using will be industry or business function specific. Now, I don't think this is 2027 thing. Personally, I think we are already seeing industry or business function specific models available now, which is great because the inaccuracy element comes from the genericness of them in some cases. So I think having models that are industry or business function specific is actually going to drive a lot of value out of it. I don't think 2027 is when that's going to happen, but I think it'll be earlier. Could be wrong. Time will tell. Fast forward another year, we are abandoning large AI models built from scratch because by then they are technical debt. There is too much cost and complexity, and their deployments are difficult to do by then. So if anyone is looking at large AI models being built from scratch, the suggestion here is that maybe you shouldn't be doing it, or you can, but consider the short lifespan of the technology, because by 2028, a lot of things will have changed, is the suggestion here. But perhaps more interestingly, the other prediction is that the majority of software engineers will be using AI coding assistants. I think this is already happening, to be honest, particularly with things like the GitHub Copilots and the AI coding assistants that are already out there. Software engineers generally love playing with AI and coding assistants, so I don't think they're going to wait until 2028. I think this will be a lot sooner. And then we have machine customers, and that's the other big key trend for me. They're suggesting here that machine customers will make 20% of websites obsolete, and by 2030, 20% of revenue for most organizations will be from machine customers. And machine customers, for those of you that don't know the term or haven't come across it before, are customers that are not human. And by that, we mean the human being will no longer make a decision to purchase something, a machine on its behalf will. So your printer will run out of ink and it will order more ink. Your fridge will recognize that you've run out of milk and it will order you more milk. So you will no longer be the one making the decision as to what to buy. A machine will be making that decision and ordering it from another machine. It's an interesting concept. I personally am all for it, but I know some people are a bit less keen. There is also the question of how accessible would this be to the wider population as well. But I think this is massively going to change the way we actually sell and we buy, because most of marketing theory, which is where my background comes from academically, is all about influencing a human from making a purchasing decision. How do we actually influence a machine in deciding what milk to buy? That's a whole different level of question marks. And the final thing is that synthetic data comes back in 2030, and the suggestion here is that the majority of the AI models will not be using real data anymore. They will be using synthetic data, and I think that makes perfect sense. So the world's going to change, and we need to keep it in mind when making decisions right now. So to summarize, is there a right way to go about adopting AI? I think there is. Microsoft has a website called WorkLab, where they talk a lot about things like this. And they have a checklist for the right way to AI that has 5 points on it. I have double that. In my opinion, what they have there is great, but I have a bit of a list, a bit of a tick box exercise for the right way to AI adoption. And the first one is making sure that whatever we're looking to use AI for, it is helping us meet our business goals. The other, second one is data. Do we have the right data quality, and have we got it available for AI models the way they will need it to be? Because there is a cost as well in getting the data ready for an AI model. Have we got the right skills internally in the organization and the right training? Have we considered ethically whether whatever we want to use an AI model for is actually a good use case for it? How are they going to interact with our existing systems and integrate? Because we have ecosystems and architecture already in organizations. If we introduce AI, how is it going to interact with everything else? How do we need it to interact with everything else? Is it capable of that? Is it private and is it secure enough? What risks are we taking by introducing it? Can we scale it, and is it flexible enough to change with the changing needs of the organization or the changing size of an organization? What is the cost of it going to be, and how are we going to measure its return on investment? How are we going to manage change management, the fact that people will have to work differently? How are we going to support them in changing their mindset and taking that journey? And the last one probably is the most common sense one, getting feedback. How are we going to make sure that we get feedback as to whether what we're doing is actually working for the people that we're doing this for? Because it is going to be the case that sometimes we'll introduce AI and it won't have the necessary effect. Maybe it's not giving people what they need. How can we improve that? Can we use something else? I think constant feedback is key, and also giving people permission to try something and fail at it and try and find a different solution. It's all very experimental. Even with AI governance, you might put a team together and it might not work and you might need to change it. It's all fairly new. So giving people that permission to try things and change them if they're not working is key. And if this is not the summary enough and you need a different summary, think of it as a burger. Bear with me, it will make sense. You have the bun, and AI adoption starts with human input and it ends with human review. So whatever you decide to do with AI, a human being has to say, these are my use cases, these are our problems, this is what we want to use AI to solve. You put a lot of yummy AI stuff in the middle. Lots of AI models exist, veggie, beef, corn, whatever you like, put it in there. But remember that it's resting on your organization and your culture. So that is the key thing here, is that it's not just in isolation, thrown in, and you hope for the best. The organization needs to support it, and the structure and the cultures need to be there for it. And obviously, at the end, you need human review. So whatever the AI model is doing or is saying or decisions it's suggesting you should take, a human needs to review that and make sure it's the right thing to do. You need to smother it with your business, tech, and AI strategies, ideally, and also smother it a bit with AI governance to make sure it's doing the right thing and there's controls around it. But the most important thing is you don't have to eat it all. So you don't have to do this all at once. You can start small and scale it up from there, which is, I imagine, what most organizations will do. So there you have it. Some useful links for you because there's a lot discussed in the last 35, 40 minutes. So on implementation, accessibility, responsible AI tools. If you'd like those, let me know, scan the QR code, send me a message. I can put a link in the chat as well. But other than that, thank you for listening. I trust you found this useful, and let's have some Q&A. Any questions? Who has a question? Or any stories you want to share on AI adoption, what you're using AI for, or co-pilots?
What was your very first point? When you said you were going to add an extra point to it, it was about 3 slides back, and I was trying to write it down because I was too busy going, yeah, that's, you were dead on. What you were saying was absolutely correct, but I hadn't actually heard anybody say it before.
Was it the responsible AI that needs to be scalable and sustainable?
Yes, it was that slide, but it was the very first thing on it.
The very first thing on it. Let's go back by burger.
Alignment with business goals.
Let's go
that
back.
Was it.
Aligning with business goals. This one, yeah, the right way to AI. Yeah.
What I just smile when you pick that one up, because I don't know if you feel the same, but I get the feel that everybody's thinking, I have to do something with AI and I better start and I'm way behind. And they're starting it without knowing, is it going to align with our business goals? Is it going to align with what we're doing as an organization? And I sometimes think some organizations are making it fit. rather than thinking, is this strategically the right thing for us right now? Because I don't know if you feel it, but I definitely think there's a fear factor out there that if we're not talking about AI, we're going to get left behind.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a fear of not including it to be perceived as not keeping up with the latest technologies and doing the best you can do with everything that's available. At the same time, people are tired of talking about AI because they just want to see the value out of it. So it's a bit of an interesting one. There is a lot of, let's add it in and see what it does without much thought process around, well, hold on, what problem are we trying to solve here? I think there is also that element of people forgetting that they had a business strategy before AI came along. So just the fact that the AI came along doesn't mean that suddenly they don't know what their organization is there for, and therefore they need to take AI and form a strategy around that. That's not the case. We had a business reason for living, for lack of a better word, before AI came along. That's still there. So it's about considering what are we trying to achieve and how can you use AI to catalyze that and make it go quicker, because I think that's where AI comes in. That's a very valid point. Yeah. The fear is definitely there of being left behind. Any other questions?
Very nice talk, Areti.
Thank you, Andy. But do you have a question?
Yes, I was going to say my personal experience is where AI is kind of surfacing in free tools, and it's changed my behavior. So I've gone and used like Notion, or Fathom is a new AI note taker thing, and it solves a problem for me right there and then. But I think that is there a car crash coming? Like, listening to your talk was fascinating, because probably the most important thing that companies should really be focusing on is that, like the burger, like you described it so well at the end, like you've got to have this so that they, because some company's going to launch an AI thing and it's going to be some sort of big car crash. Like, I'm pretty sure it's already happened with, was it an airline giving out free tickets or something like that? It's like
a chatbot. Yeah, a chatbot. Yeah. I think was giving away tickets for I think it was a flight to Sydney or Australia or something for very, very cheap prices, like, or something. Yeah,
a bit of small financial impact. The real monster impact is going to be some massive data breach, because the AI consumed the information and it got loosed somewhere it shouldn't have done. So I think that, like, it's a kind of a manipulation almost. It's made me go and use that particular tool. They've got a new sign up because, like, it's got AI, that's handy, saves me 5 minutes. But what's the governance? And I think that will come in time, as with all things. Like, you're gonna, maybe people will get educated, or they need to getting educated, listening to talks like this one, to understand, like, the importance of the control and the regulation kind of behind it. I suppose that was my observation, really, more than a question. But so do you think what's your view at the minute, is exactly as the last person who was asking about, does it align with the business goals? How high priority is it out in the wider world of regulation before just getting AI?
Yeah, it's an old debate, right? Do you start using something that is experimental before it's been regulated? And I think that's where the risk taking comes in. Are you an organization that is particularly happy to take a risk with something new and try it out and potentially lose money on it? Or are you willing to actually, wait it out until it has been proven and then use it? I think Microsoft very recently launched a new tool, I think it's called Correction, for AI, where it's giving the wrong answers. And a lot of people are like, that's great, but I'm going to wait for it to be proven before I do anything with this. So there's definitely that fear still of adopting something that's very, very new. There needs to be regulation. Is there going to be data breaches? Potentially, yes, because AI is new. Someone is going to find a way, or try to find a way, to get in. Cybersecurity, very big concern and risk at the moment, for sure. Synthetic data will help with that, because eventually, if most AI models use synthetic data, if synthetic data is breached, is that as much of an issue when it's all fake? Probably not, which is why, we're looking at synthetic data probably in the first place. So I think eventually, as with any technology, it will over time get better, and the risks of using it will get less, and it will become the norm. So we won't be saying with AI anymore, because everything is it's like e-banking. No one says e-banking anymore. We just call it banking, right? It's going to be the same thing with AI things. There's going to be AI everywhere, and it will just be the norm, and people will be will be used to it and accept it, bar perhaps situations where ethically there's a bit of a question around whether an AI model should be making decisions instead of a human. So I think that there will be a bit of debate on that one, I think.
Cool, thank you.
Cheers, Andy.
I've got a question, if that's okay.
Go on, Mike. Yeah.
Yeah. Just wondering if you've got any recommended training paths or certification paths or any other things in the AI sphere that you'd recommend people take a look at to learn more.
Yes, I think one of the best ones is there's in the useful links, the top link is the AI Learning Hub, and that has specific learning for your different roles. So whichever role you are in an organization, it's got different AI training modules for you. So I'm gonna see if I can put this in the chat. Actually, I don't have access to the chat.
No, I know, it's the way it's set up.
I have no chat.
Do the Q&A, it should go in there okay. Oh, it says it's not set up. I've actually had a message to say it was set up.
That's okay. Send me a message on LinkedIn. If anyone wants training, send me a message and I'll be like, hi, can I have the link? And I'll be like, there it is. But yeah, we'll put a link to the slides as well so you can get all of the links. I'll say
what we can do is put that in the a YouTube event in the comments if you wanted to do that, if they were secure, or just even this one, whatever you're comfortable with.
Yeah, that's fine. I can share a link to the slides as well, PDF them, and that way you've got all the links in there. But yeah, it's the AI Learning Hub. I think if you just search for Microsoft AI Learning Hub, it'll probably come up anyway. It's got some very good training underneath it, and I found the Microsoft Work Lab articles and kind of newsletters quite useful as well for knowing what Microsoft is doing with this stuff and what they're finding out. And then you've got, like you can see, you've got a Copilot Learning Hub there. If you're interested in Copilot, they've got there's some really good online videos at the moment in terms of prompting or using the Copilots in different ways with different examples of what you can do with it. So definitely look out for those as well. But yeah, that's my top 3, I think, would be the AI Learning Hub, the Copilot Learning Hub, and Microsoft Work Lab for little newsletters. What's happening out there. Oh, you're welcome. Anything else from anyone else?
I sort of just wanted to say, I think these sessions are really important for breaking the whole process down of understanding what to do with AI. And I know just from that there's a local college that have got, say, 2,000 students that have kind of said to me, do you know anyone who can help us learn what to do with AI? And the students that are sort of ahead of the teachers in that environment. And it just seems like such a big task for them to embark on. They don't know where to start. And I think this sort of content really helps people calm down a little bit and take a step back and sort of walk through it in a logical way. So it was more of a thank you, really, for doing that.
No, you're welcome. I'm glad you found it useful.
Fab, thanks very much. See you all soon.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.
Cheers, bye.